Hey, it's so good to have you with us. Welcome to the 700 Club. Well, we're learning more about the suspected gunman in the shooting at a high school in Florida. He's a 19-year-old former student who had been expelled from that school. And other students had said if anyone was going to shoot up the school, this guy was the man.
Well, now 17 people are dead after the shooting rampage Wednesday, and the killer's in custody. Gary Lane brings us the story.
Those familiar with alleged gunman Nicholas Cruz say he was a loner, an outcast, who barely interacted with other students when he attended Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Cruz had been expelled from the Parkland, Florida school for disciplinary reasons, and some teachers warned he could come back and cause trouble. Come back he did, armed with an assault rifle.
He had countless magazines, multiple magazines, and at this point we believe he had one AR-15 rifle. I don't know if he had a second weapon.
It was near the end of the school day when just after 2 p.m., Cruz allegedly entered the school. The fire alarm was set off, and that's when students say he started shooting them in the hallway as they left their classrooms.
It was just another fire drill because we had another one earlier. But as soon as the fire drill got pulled, the fire alarm got pulled, and kids were evacuating, I heard 5 pops.
Several students captured the tragedy on their smartphones. This video showed some of the gunfire.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Police rushed to the scene.
I have the gunshot victim. He's by the entrance on the west side of the school.
As SWAT teams moved in, students barricaded themselves under classroom desks, some texting their parents in what could have been a final desperate act of communication.
She keeps telling me to stay away. Be safe, Mom, you stay away. And I'm like, and I'm telling her, no, Crystal, I'm your mother, I'm not staying away.
Students fled the building, most with their hands raised over their heads. Many abandoned their backpacks as paramedics treated the wounded and took them away on stretchers. An hour after the shooting began, the gunman was still at large. Traumatized students mourned their lost friends. Worried parents just wanted to know if their children were safe.
We can't get to her. We can't get a hold of her.
Have you called and you've texted, nothing has come back?
No. Her girlfriend got shot. We heard.
This student saw her teacher shot in front of her.
We saw his body for like 30 minutes. We were just like praying and crying, and then the police came and we just got out.
The suspect was taken into custody nearly 2 hours after the shooting.
I ask the community for your prayers, your support for these children and their families.
You're furious. How could this ever happen in this country? How could this happen in this state?
But happen it did, even though some students and teachers saw potential warning signs. Some students had even said in the past that if anyone was going to shoot up the school, it would be Nicholas Cruz. Unlike killers in other mass shootings, the troubled 19-year-old alleged shooter did not kill himself and wasn't gunned down by police. Since he's still alive, he'll face justice and trial. And in the state of Florida, that means he could potentially face the death penalty if convicted of this horrific crime. Gary Lane, CBN News.
I was trying to find out if he'd been taking any kind of medication, antidepressants. We don't have any evidence of that yet, but something might come out so we can find out something more about him. But it's hard to understand just being expelled that this would cause this kind of rage, but apparently it did. But he wasn't just a little boy. He was 19 years old, so he'll be tried as an adult and face the death penalty, and, well, that's an appropriate penalty for something as horrible as this. But we mourn the deaths of these wonderful students and teachers who were gunned down in this senseless act of violence. Well, in other news, it looks like a bipartisan group of senators has reached an agreement on immigration. John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat. The senators are crossing party lines to come up with a plan to create a path for citizenship for dreamers. The new plan would grant a 10 to 12-year route to citizenship for 1.8 million young people brought illegally to the United States when they were children. It would also provide $25 billion to secure the country's borders. The plan was announced by 16 senators, winning support from many Democrats. There could be a vote on that measure and 3 other immigration plans today, but it's hard to say if any of those have enough votes to pass. Well, Vice President Mike Pence is fired back yesterday at comments made on a popular daytime talk show where a panelist bashed him after a former White House staffer said Pence thinks he hears from Jesus Christ. On ABC's The View, Joy Behar said it's one thing to talk to Jesus, it's another thing when Jesus talks to you. She continued by saying that's called mental illness, if I'm not correct, hearing voices. In an interview with Axios journalist Mike Allen, Pence called that an insult to the vast majority of Americans who cherish their faith.
I just think it demonstrates how out of touch some in the mainstream media are with the faith and values of the American people, that you could have a major network like ABC permit a forum for invective against religion like that. And I call them out on it, not because of what was said about me, but it's just simply wrong for ABC to have a television program that expresses that kind of religious intolerance.
You can see Pence's full remarks on our website, cbnnews.com. That video quickly went viral with well over 5 million views on CBN News' Facebook page in less than a day. Pat?
Well, I just commend the Vice President for his bold statement. But listen, you read the New Testament and you read the Old Testament. I was looking at today, Isaiah said, "The word of the Lord came to me saying," every prophet in the Old Testament has heard from God. Every writer in the New Testament has heard from God. All of the saints of God, the great men of faith, have heard from God. And for these know-nothings to sound off like this and to say it's mental illness, that means that they're condemning every single author of the whole Bible. And that shows a type of intolerance that we just cannot stand. You know, this isn't, you're not looking at some crazy guy off in the commune someplace. You're looking at the men and women who wrote the scriptures that we all admire. And for ABC to be making fun of that, they ought to be ashamed of themselves. They ought to pull that show off the air. It's time to stand up for this kind of against this kind of intolerance. John, what do you have?
Well, Pat, in health news, processed foods raise the risks of cancer because of higher levels of fat, including saturated fat, salt and sugar, along with additives. Those are the findings from a study in the British Medical Journal, which says eating 10% more ultra-processed foods leads to a 12% higher risk of cancer. Those processed foods include things like cakes, sugary drinks, candy, and processed meats. Still, the researchers say a little processed food here and there is okay, but experts do still recommend a balanced diet with a little junk food. And Pat, the level of concern here is high because for a lot of families, processed foods accounts for a lot of what they buy at the grocery store.
Well, the truth is processed food just aren't, they're not good for you. And we need to eat vegetables. We need to eat meat that is without all kinds of additives. And I'm pleased to report I weighed today, and I'm about 3 pounds less than I was when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
That's good, huh?
Well, you better stop that, or you're going to
No, I don't want to stop. If I waste away, it'll be a good thing. But I'm telling you. All right.
15, really? Wow. Is that deliberate on your part? Are you doing that?
I just sort of,
you know. Fruit and nuts, right?
I'm eating healthy, and healthy, you lose weight.
Yeah, well, you look great. We're so glad you're back and healthy.
I hope I look great. Thank you very much. I did have a stroke, and it happened real fast, and I'm getting over the effects of it, but it was that was a miracle.
That was a miracle, for which we are grateful.
For which I am grateful as well, dear. Thank you very much.